Well, hello there. It is great to see you again, and welcome back to Path to Abundant Living. I'm your host, Ryan Ruff. It is great to be back with you this morning, and as always, I'll have the stars of our show, my right-hand men, Mr. Matt Nordman and Scott Morrison of Morrison Nordman Wealth Management joining me. And we're going to be diving into a really unique conversation today. If you're familiar with our show, you know that we typically tackle wealth management-related challenges and issues and strategies, solutions, the whole nine yards on this show. We tackle them, we dive into the various elements of them, how Matt and Scott work with clients to work through these challenges and whatnot. But today we've got a really interesting format of an episode for you. We've got a great guest that's joining us today. It's Miss Cindy Gonzalex, the owner as well as the designer of Theory of Travel. Now, we're going to be getting into Cindy's background in a moment and sharing why, in fact, we invited her to join the show today. But boy, are we excited to have Cindy aboard. But first, let's go ahead and bring Matt and Scott out and say hi to them before we get right into the nitty-gritty of today's episode. Matt, Scott, it's good to see you guys this morning. How are we doing?
Ryan, great to see you. Scott,
Hey,
how
Ryan.
are you doing this morning?
Wonderful. I'm excited about today's event.
I am very excited. Very excited.
Yeah. We got Cindy Gonzalex, owner and designer over at Theory of Travel, is joining us. And guys, I'd love to read off a little bit of bio, share some background information on Cindy before we bring her on and introduce her to the audience and whatnot. And also, I'd love to kind of hear from you guys in terms of your experiences and how you met Cindy and came into her world. But first, here's her bio for the folks out there. After traveling the globe, both above and below the water, Cindy has finally landed in the world of custom crafted getaways. Sounds fun. Created personalized vacations for clients which in every detail is covered and every dream is imagined. Her approach is a holistic approach where she takes some time to get to know you as an individual and your family, what's important to you, and then provides highly curated trips that you'll be telling your friends and family about for years. Now, from a luxury safari through Tanzania or a private villa that's full of staff on the Tuscany coast, she makes your dreams a reality. And if you really think about it, your time is truly your most valuable asset. We talk a lot about that on this show. And let's not waste another minute on planning vacations. Let's let Cindy take it to the next level for us. Really excited to get into today's conversation with Cindy about her world of these highly curated travel trips. But before we bring Cindy out, I'd love to gauge, your thoughts, guys. How did Cindy fall into your ecosphere, and how did you guys get to know Cindy in the first place?
Great question. So I met Cindy I was introduced to Cindy about 6 months ago from a friend and part of the mastermind group that we're part of. And really you start thinking about, on our show, and what we do is help people generate wealth and protect their wealth and, pass it on, and charitable giving and all those aspects of it. And then the other aspect of it is, okay, so why do you do all this? And people like to enjoy life. And one of those things is travel. And then talking with someone, they said, oh, we got this great trip planned to Egypt and we don't have to do a thing except show up. And I was like, tell me more, right? Because we love it when people kind of help us in these areas. And I was like, okay. And so then met Cindy and talked with her, and it's like, wow, more people need to meet Cindy and what she does and try to create these, epic memories that you'll just be telling everyone about for decades in some cases. And so again, it's like, well, why do you do it? Well, this is one of those things that, hey, I want to have epic memories that I can talk with my family and friends about. So that's why we thought, man, this would be is to let everybody know about Cindy and what she does.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we talk about living that life of amazing significance, that path to abundant living. It's in the show name, and abundant living, vacations are a part of it. It's those memorable experiences that not only you get to experience yourself, but also you get to share with your family, right? Those stories that you'll have for a lifetime that can help kind of pave the way to who you grow to be as a person in terms of speaking of maybe your kids and your family. So awesome stuff. Well, guys, here, I'll toss things over to you. We can bring Cindy aboard. I know you've got a handful of questions you want to run through with her today on the episode. But with that, Cindy, welcome aboard. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Cindy, great to see you again.
Good to see you. Yeah.
So for those, and we can see, your background. So first and foremost, before we even get into it, you are in Ecuador. Is that correct?
I am. I do live in Ecuador. We're here most of the year. We do come back to the States for a few months for family, but right now we're headquartered in Ecuador. Our
That is
business is US based though, so everything happens in the US.
okay. Well, kind of tell us how did theory of travel come to be into existence, and how did we get to today?
So I spent a decade leading scuba trips around the world. I was an instructor, a trainer, owned a school. And so I would take scuba divers around the world to amazing places underwater. And occasionally I'd throw a land trip in on the front or the back. Like when we're diving the Galapagos, we'd add in the Amazon. Um, and when that all kind of came to an end, I got into real estate. Did really well in real estate and retired. Uh, I don't retire well though. So I thought, what's my passion? What is the one thing I've really loved doing in my life? And it wasn't the scuba, it was the creating the memories for people. People would still reach out to me years after they'd gone on a trip and say, oh my gosh, remember when? I wish we could do that again. And so that's where I thought, I want to create bucket list memories on every single vacation. People talk about this bucket list trip they have. Well, I think every single trip should have bucket list moments. You should have things
Agreed.
that you look back on. So that's where it kind of came from.
Okay.
Hey, Cindy, I wanted to tell you, part of our wealth management process is something called a discovery meeting. And I think
Yes.
Matt would probably find this to be true, that invariably, whenever we get to that goals and objectives part of that discussion, travel comes up constantly as one of the goals of the client.
Yes.
But one of the things that's also, somewhat of a consistent quandary for the client is, if I ask them, well, where do you want to go? They oftentimes have trouble. If I said, what would be the perfect trip, they have trouble coming up with that trip. How do you go about helping someone when they don't really know what that trip is?
Well, so I take what they're not so much the destination, but what their passions are. What is it you love doing? Do you love being with your family? Is bringing that extended family of 20 people together like the big thing? Well, then we can put that 20 people and say, where would we want to go with it? What activities do you like? What activities do you think you might like that you've been too busy to ever try? And then I've got a list of places that are often bucket list destinations. And it all depends on the client as to where their passion, where their interest lies. If they're avid bird watchers, I'm not going to send them someplace with no birds, right? So we're going to look deeper into the client than just a kitschy destination.
So if you along those lines, if they don't know, and so you kind of help them, but what if someone came to you and said, boy, I really believe I want to go here. Have
Mhm.
you ever maybe steered isn't the right word, but we're going to use it, steered them into after going through this kind of discovery process, go, yeah, I know this is what you said, but I believe this you're going to love this more. Have you ever had that experience? Kind of like, what was the result?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I had a client come to me and they were looking at Fairbanks, Alaska. They wanted to see the Northern Lights. And a friend of theirs had seen them in Fairbanks. Fairbanks, Alaska, while you can see the Northern Lights there, it's definitely not a guarantee and it's not maybe the most phenomenal setting. So I asked them if they'd ever heard of Svalbard. And they said, no, where's that? And I said, well, it's the uppermost city closest to the North Pole. And not only can you see the Northern Lights there, but you can go dog sledding. You actually have to be accompanied by somebody with a gun because polar bears might wander into the village. I mean, it is a cool space. And it has the most phenomenal Northern Lights show you can get. And they said, okay, we've never heard of it. It sounds amazing. They went, they saw the Northern Lights like no other and had a fantastic time. So it's still accomplishing what they want to do, but there might be a different way they hadn't heard of before that might accomplish it even better.
Okay, sign me up for that trip. What was the name of the town?
Svalbard. It's in
Okay.
Norway.
All
Yeah.
right. Yeah. I'm ready for that one. So I'm gonna jump on the next one, Scott. So if you kind of have all these new ideas of, like, if people haven't heard of them, like, how do you present new ideas to people, or, get information out of, oh, like this Egypt trip that you're going on coming up? It's like, well, how do you let people know that, hey, this is what I'm thinking about, or this is kind of what's out there? Because, like we were talking about earlier, it's like Scott said, well, I don't even know what I don't know.
Exactly, exactly. And so I think one of my biggest pieces of my job is just to learn everything about everywhere, right? Um, and I can't tell you I've been everywhere because I haven't. Someday I will be. Um, but it's when I present a new place, I'm going to be presenting the highlights for that particular person. Now, when I take on a new client, I get to know them. So I'm not shooting in the dark. I have ideas of what's important to them, where they've been, where they might like to go. Are they mountain people? Are they ocean people? Are they high adventure people? Or are they lay on the beach and relax people? Right. So when I'm bringing a new idea to them, it's very much curated to what is going to fit in their realm. And I do it by suggestion. I'm very, very gentle with my suggestions, unless it needs to be a little bit
A little
more than a
firmer.
suggestion. Yeah, if it's a little firmer, it's usually because something's happening in the middle of their trip. Like I know this Friday, the German airlines are all going on strike. So that's an issue. So if it's something like that, it's more than a suggestion. It's excuse me, we're going to be changing your flight. Um, but I've already got a solution before I ever contact them with anything like that.
In that respect, as you're going through all of these different ideas with the client, with the client, who is the ideal client for you? Who do you, when somebody comes to you, who do you get excited about?
So my ideal client is going to be a client who really values time. They are committed to really taking that time away from work, and they want to know, how can I spend this time with the most, getting the most out of the time I have away from my normal everyday uh, job, right? So they are going to be the ones that they're going to want stuff to do, new experiences, new happenings. I love people who are super adventurous. And by adventurous, I don't mean you have to be mountain climbing. By adventurous, I mean you're going to be getting out of the box. You're going to be trying something a little new. If a client has been to the same exact resort year after year after year, they might not be my ideal client. Uh, they don't need me to curate anything for them. But if they're saying, you know what, I have never been to Croatia, and a friend of mine mentioned Croatia. I know nothing about Croatia. Can you help me with Croatia? That's my ideal client, because they're going to be going someplace they haven't been. I'm able to weave in magical surprises throughout their trip and really make it something special for them.
But again, sign me up. So 30 years ago, prior to the internet, let's say, um, it was, you would call someone to help with your travel arrangements. Well, nowadays people are like, oh, I can go online and I can do this and do it. So how do you differentiate yourself, or show that, hey, this is going to be a better experience for you?
So since the pandemic, and I used to be a DIY travel person, right? But since the pandemic, travel advisors have really come back into a need situation. Right now, the airlines are a mess. They just are. So knowing what flights are coming up that are probably going to be canceled, like Friday, anything from Lufthansa is not happening. So all of that behind the scenes stuff. Yeah, you can still go onto an Expedia or an Orbit and book everything yourself, but why would you? Like, when you have somebody who can do all of the work for you and you don't have to touch it, It's valuable. Having somebody behind the scenes, if something goes wrong, I'm already there rebooking a flight. I'm already there checking for the lost luggage. I'm contacting the hotel, letting them know you're going to be a late arrival.
So you're
I'm
my
re
you're
huh?
my contact. So I don't
I
have to
am your
worry
personal
about.
assistant. I'm your personal travel assistant. That's what I am. Yeah. You have nothing to worry about. I take care and handle everything. The other big piece is that um, if something does go wrong, you're relaxed. I make sure that I have you situated before anything else happens. So you just go along. And by not planning your own trip, you get to have magical surprises all along. Because sometimes when we research our trip, now we already know this. We know this the whole script, right? We know
Right.
what's going to happen, who's going to pick us up, what kind of car it's going to be. When you have an advisor doing it, you know the general itinerary. Those little surprises that come, you're going to love them.
Yeah.
Can I build on that a little bit, Matt?
Yeah, of course. Of
Well,
course.
my wife and I, we went to Santiago, Chile, and it's a trip that we would have never done had my daughter not been, studying abroad. And it would have been primarily the language barrier and or concerns about safety, security, that kind of thing. So how do you assist us in that regard? Because I would imagine there's a lot of people that scratch some places off their list for those reasons.
That's a great question. So, in every single destination that I take care of, which is everywhere around the world, I have people on the ground that are English speaking. You will always be accompanied by a guide, unless you don't want to be. You'll always be accompanied by a guide that speaks English. Your drivers will speak English. We have people on the ground in each country that are your host. So when something happens, I had a couple in Peru. The everything shut down. So Peru shut down. I had a couple in Peru. My host on the ground had them booked into a hotel before they even knew that there was going to be a public strike. So she had them booked for 3 extra days in a hotel, knowing this thing was coming and they had just started hearing it. By the time my clients got back from the tour of Machu Picchu, the host met them along with their guide and said, hey, there's going to be a little happening here, and we've already solved all the problems for you. Let's get you put away in the new hotel. And my clients were thrilled. Like, they were in the middle of a nationwide strike, and they had an amazing experience because of the people I work with around the world.
That's fantastic. So
Yeah.
it's clear that you really, really enjoy this and helping people and creating these epic memories. And so what's the part of the job where you're like, okay, if I didn't have to do this anymore, I wouldn't, or if you could delegate a portion of it, or I don't want to use the word dread, but what's the part you're like, okay, I don't want to deal with that.
And sometimes I actually do delegate that portion. So the worst part of my job is what I've been talking about. It's the delayed luggage, the canceled flights, the things that are out of my control. That little earthquake that happened over in Turkey recently. Well, there's an airport there. And I've got people going through that airport, and it should be fine by the time they need to go. But like, keeping up on world events that I have no control over, and then navigating through those are the pieces that my job would just be a whole lot easier if the world could just be a whole lot more stable.
Right. Not only stable, or if we could control it a little bit, right? Wouldn't that help things?
Yeah, that control thing.
I know Scott and I have discussed that in our line of work. It'd be, if we could control a few more things, boy, it makes it a whole lot easier.
It really would. It really would.
So what do you do to kind of relax and kind of let your hair down, or just kind of say, you're in Ecuador where the weather, I'm guessing, is, 75 and sunny or so most days, if not all days, right? So you don't have to worry about, like us, we're expecting some snow here today. So what do you do to relax?
Well, I've always loved gardening, and gardening in Ecuador has taken on like a whole new meaning. I'm able to grow houseplants outside. And so I just got done building a pond in my front yard. Gardening is really a big thing for me. I travel as much as I can. Next month, I'll be in Rome, Madrid, and Egypt. So definitely travel is a big one. And then just time with family.
Okay. And do you
Cindy,
get back
what,
to the, oh, go ahead, Scott.
Cindy, what are your top 3 destinations? If somebody came to you with a blank slate, what top 3 destinations would you be recommending right now?
So right now, my favorite 3 things are I'm really into Antarctica. Antarctica used to be kind of a rough trip to take, and right now the lines that are doing it, the small lines, they have some big ships going to Antarctica. I'm not thrilled about those, but I work with a couple small ships that do Antarctica, and I'm really into that one. You can take a helicopter over Antarctica. You can dive underneath Antarctica. You can go, they have professional photographers on board that will help you take the right shots of the penguins that are standing 10 feet away from you. So I'm really loving Antarctica right now. And that one launches out of Argentina, where we do like probably an extra little jaunt in Argentina since you've flown all the way there. That's probably my number one. Africa's always good. Africa has so many different places you can go. You can go up with mountain gorillas. You can go see the big 5, your hippos, rhinos, elephants, giraffes, and tigers. You've got all of Africa, and they've got some amazing lodges and very small experiences. So not big buses. You're in a luxury lodge that has lions walking by you in the morning. I mean, these are amazing places. And then I guess for the third one, it's hard to pick just one destination, but I think for the third one, I would say the biggest experience that I like to give people is time with family. And in 2023, what that looks like is villas. So we have private villas. I work with a company with over 5,000 villas in 70 countries. And a villa experience is more than just the home. The homes are all fantastic. They're set in just picturesque places. But it's more than just the home. It's what comes with the home. And it's all tailored around whatever that family or group wants. Anything from a private chef to being flown in on a private jet. The outings, if you wanted a sunset catamaran just for you and the family, we can do that. Basically on that, no is not an option. So whatever you want, as long as it's legal and attainable, it can happen. And so those are kind of the 3 things that I'm kind of working on mostly right now.
This is kind of a sidebar, but it goes along with it. Is there one thing that you tell people, I mean, besides their passport, make sure you pack this? Is there a thing? Because I'm sure you have a packing list for people, but is there one like, do not forget this?
Yeah, so other than the passport, really, my big thing I'm telling people right now is do not forget a complete change of clothes in your carry-on. And sometimes we like to put all our valuables in the carry-on, right? We pack with our cameras and our computers, and leave a room for a complete change of clothes, because in today's airline world, you may need that.
Because believe it or not, luggage gets lost, right?
It does. And now with air tags, we can tell where our luggage is, and luggage is going crazy places. You might be going to Denver and your luggage may end up in Belarus.
That would be a problem.
It would.
I forget about the air. Do you use air tags yourself? Like I forget that that's a thing.
I know a lot of people do. I don't use the air tags because you can't call up the airline and say, well, my air tag says my luggage is in Belarus, because they don't pay any attention to that. And so luckily, I'm not wood, my luggage is not taking a vacation from me, but if it decides to take a vacation from me, I'm just going to not worry about where it is. I'm just going to continue to ask the airline to bring it back.
Okay. Well, and again, you'd like to believe that eventually it will make it back to home, right?
It usually does. Yeah.
Okay.
I was going to say, Cindy, as our time's getting a little bit shorter here, is there a question that you were hoping that we would ask that we haven't asked?
I guess maybe just how to get a hold of me, right?
So
Right.
how do people get a hold of you?
So probably the easiest way to is my website is theoryoftravel.com. And they can just hit the website. My email is Cindy at theoryoftravel.com. And then I also have a Facebook page where I post just some dream tips, some travel tips, things like that. So those are probably the easiest ways to get a hold of me.
Theoryoftravel.com and Facebook. Can't be.
Yes,
So what you're doing is you're trying to make people's lives easier
I'm
and
trying
create
to make
those epic
people's
memories.
lives more memorable. Yeah,
Yeah,
I believe that wealth is being able to do what you want with whom you want when you want.
that
And
is
when you look at travel, like it's there.
that's uh that's fantastic. Well, I'm so glad that you're able to join us, and the memories that you create for people are just that. They are epic memories. So
Yes.
appreciate you
Well,
being here today.
yeah,
Yes.
especially
Thank you
I
for
would
having
love
me.
to. I would love to be able to say I'm going to make a referral to you because I will be able to experience it myself. It sounds wonderful.
Alrighty, fantastic. So there you have it. Cindy Gonzalez from Theory of Travel joining us today. Super, super thrilled to have her aboard. Really, really interesting work that she's doing. Travel. It's always fun, right? Matt, Scott, I know you guys have had your own travel experiences and you talk about travel as being this big part of someone's life, on that path to abundant living beyond their business, perhaps to enjoy their time with their family, friends, and anybody else in their life. Do you guys have any unique experiences or things that you would take away from the conversation that we had with Cindy today and maybe relay to clients or even just internalize for your own benefit?
Well, real quick, I want Scott to share his story, but so you talk about it, Ryan, that amazing life of significance. Well, what can be more amazing than building these epic memories for you and your family and your friends or whatever level you want to go to? And so I know Scott had a trip that he had. Why don't you just share, Scott, the trip that you did have planned prior to, the world shutting down?
Yeah, well, my wife and I had, one of our bucket list trips was to go to Africa, and we
Tanya,
had
by the way, your wife's name is Tanya.
Tanya, yeah, and we were planning to do kind of a Tanzania, Kenya safari trip, and then COVID came around and basically shut everything down. We had someone similar to Cindy planning it for us. I think that one of the things that ties back into kind of the analogous part of what we do as financial planners is we've got our goals, but they're not always necessarily as well defined as we'd like them to be. So you need somebody like that to kind of help clarify those things, because sometimes you end up worrying about things that you might not need to worry about. I think one of the things that following the cancellation of that trip, you're getting on the world news by way of your social media and the phones and everything else, and you're just consuming all this bad news, and you're wondering whether it's ever going to be safe enough to go out again. And so that was kind of the case with us, and that's why we hadn't really even entertained the idea of putting that trip back together. But having talked to Cindy, became clear that, hey, there's a safe way to do just about anything if you've got the right planner. And I think that ties back into what we do as financial advisors. You think about the risks that are out there in the market, but there are ways to, use those as opportunities. So,
Well, it's exactly like you're saying. It's like, okay, so you have your goals and maybe they aren't well defined, but having someone help you define
right,
those goals and then saying, yeah, what, and then showing people what, like Cindy said, well, what's possible, and showing
right.
people what's possible with their wealth, or, all
Yep.
the different aspects of their lives.
And fellas, I'd even look at the flip side of the coin. Yes, Cindy can say, well, hey, the news paints or media paints a negative picture of a certain location or things happening in this area. Well, you can look at the flip side. If you're looking on social media, you can also see, oh, only the bright and beautiful, wonderful things at these particular resorts or these particular
Yeah,
destinations. But because that's what they want you to see. And then
right.
while, when you have a certified expert you can leverage their expertise, their knowledge surrounding a given
Absolutely.
location, specific resorts, they can maybe tell you, hey, that buffet isn't as good as you think it is, or as good as it
Right.
looks on that
Yeah.
Exactly.
on that Instagram post. But
Yeah.
so, a little bit of devil's advocate there.
You definitely need that critical eye. It's one thing to have an unrealistic expectation and then have somebody else say, okay, let's tell you the realities about what you're thinking here.
Yeah, what's realistic? Yeah. And
Yeah.
yes, you can, this is achievable, or it's way totally outside the box. So yeah, there are a ton of similarities.
So I just wanted to ask you, Matt, when are you going to dive under the ice of Antarctica?
You know what? That sounds it's crazy, but that sounds very exciting to me.
Okay,
Like,
yeah. All right. Make sure we're fully insured before you do that.
Yeah, we'll have to revisit one of those key person insurance policy conversations we had.
there's so many places you like. Again, it's like you don't know what you don't know. And I've had, we've had some clients who have gone to Antarctica, and some have said great things, but I don't believe it's been, using a travel advisor like Cindy, who says, no, we're going to curate this specifically. It's been on one of those, like she had talked about, one of those big ships.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, yeah, you're going to dive under. I'm like, that does sound fascinating to me.
There's something
Yeah.
beautiful about doing kind of a boutique experience where, if you're in a group size, it's a lot smaller, or if it's private, even better, because then the experience is true. It's authentic to you. You're going to be able to have access to a little bit more than you would with a massive group on a big ship or, big hotel kind of vibe. And, my wife and I, for our honeymoon, like I had mentioned earlier, we stayed at a boutique spot. It was really, really awesome, frankly, for lack of a better word, to be able to leverage the insight and expertise from a travel advisor, and to put us in a location that we never would have even considered in the first place. I think we were thinking Hawaii, maybe an all-inclusive in Mexico somewhere, and then our travel advisor came to us with St. Lucia. Never considered it. I had been fortunate enough to travel to the Caribbean in different ways, shapes, and forms in my life, but I had never been to St. Lucia. And once we started seeing pictures and she started sharing information with us, really granular details about some specific strategies and why she would pick certain things for certain days, it just came clear to my wife and I that it was a no-brainer that moving forward beyond our honeymoon, man, we need to leverage, somebody like this, a Cindy that exists out there, because boy, is it ever so valuable.
Right. Short
I
of,
think what
if you're going to plan that little weekend getaway, yeah, that's one thing. But if you're going to do that, having someone planning all those little details, and it just makes it so much, for lack of, it's more epic. It's like the memories are just, that are created from that are fantastic.
Absolutely. And guys, I know as we continue to move forward on this show, we're going to have some unique guests that are coming aboard, just like Cindy did today. And for anybody in our audience then who, appreciates the conversation, the insight that our guests are bringing onto the show, and maybe they want to chat with you two a little further, whether it's about that guest or any of the knowledge that we discussed today, or rather even just want to gauge your interest in some of these topics, what would be the best way they can get in touch with you guys?
Sure, Ryan. Traditional way, pick up the phone, call 517-333-7967, or go to our website, morrisonnordman.com. You can learn about our story, but there's also a place if you want to, set up a call and we can figure out what is your amazing life of significance and how can we help.
Fantastic. Well, guys, look, I appreciate you both being on board here today. Getting to chat with Cindy was great earlier, and it's always interesting to hear how something like travel can be tied into the world of wealth management. But boy, are they truly cohesive together. And I know a lot of folks out there that might be watching or listening to this conversation are very much realizing that after today's discussion. So appreciate you both, and looking forward to jumping back on the next one with you.
Hey, Ryan. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
sounds good. Have a great day, Ryan.
You too, guys. And look, hey, we want to take one final moment and say thank you to our audience for hanging out and spending some time with us today. If you enjoyed today's discussion, you took anything away from it, whether it was from the wealth management vein or, of course, Cindy's, knowledge and insight that she brought from Theory of Travel, be sure to subscribe to the show on whichever platform you check this out on. That way you never miss out on another great conversation between Scott, Matt, myself, or one of our great guests that we have lined up for future episodes. And boy, do we have a great list of guests, and we're excited to bring those to you. So go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss out on those. But for Matt, for Scott, I'm Ryan. We're going to go ahead and say so long, but we appreciate you stopping by and being with us on Path to Abundant Living.